gracing our stage next is a leader who is truly leading by example. Our next guest helped his country top global rankings, having selected a cabinet made up of 70% female ministers. His Excellency Edi Rama, Prime Minister of Albania, is joined by Dbeibel Hall, founder and CEO of Fikr Institute, for conversation on the impact of engaging women in top decision making in government. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the moderator and our distinguished speaker.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Your Excellency to the UAE. It's a pleasure having you at the World Government Summit, as well as sharing a stage with you for the second time in less than 6 months. We're going to start today's session on Albania's exceptional 70% female cabinet model. Your Excellency, you have championed women and the role of women at the highest level of government. Can you take us through your model, and can you also let us know how applicable it is to other contexts and regions?
Thank you very much, and let me say first that I'm very sincerely humbled by this invitation and the opportunity to participate in such an impressive row of events here in this platform, and to succeed such impressive women one after the other, and have the opportunity to speak about our experience. Now, I want to say it very bluntly that it has not been about a model, but it has been about a necessity to make things happen and to get things done. So I can witness by experience that what Margaret Thatcher said is really true. If you want to talk, find men and do it. If you want to make things happen, find women and do it. It's another question why Margaret Thatcher was the only woman in her cabinet. But I can witness by experience that with women, the chances to get things done are higher than with men. And I don't pretend that this is a model for everyone. I'm just speaking about Albania.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, Your Excellency, while Albania's efforts on this file are both groundbreaking and sincere, what is your advice to leaders, whether in countries, multilateral organizations, or the private sector? How do you advise them on going about not using the woman card as a political scoring point? How do we, I guess, differentiate between authentic empowerment of women and more theatrical empowerment of women?
Listen, there are two things I can say regarding to your very interesting and also not easy question. The first is that for the time being we should not be really worried about what you call theatrical, because whatever is done in this direction is a good thing. Getting women more under the spotlight, giving them more space and opportunities to participate and to represent is of a crucial importance. And sometimes this has to go through means that might seem imposed or forced from the authority of the parliament, or from the authority of the state, or from the authority of the ruler himself when it comes to, for example, certain Arab countries, but it has to happen. So this is something that goes also for the quotas, you know. One can argue if quotas are the perfect thing to do, but in the same time, quotas are a good thing to do. And then it becomes a genuine exercise. You mentioned in the beginning, and I saw that it was even written in the presentation, the number of women in our government, which is practically the most exaggerated worldwide, more than 70%. But it was not something that came out because we wanted to get there, but it came out naturally. In the beginning, when I formed my first government, it was something I wanted to have, 50-50. But then, with the work going on and trying to pick the right person for the right job, I realized that at the end there were more women than men adapted to the job to be done. So it came then in a natural way. So I would be much more open, even when there is what you call theatrical, because through the theatrical then things start to become natural. And look what's happening, for example, nowadays in Saudi Arabia, with all the controversies and with all the criticism that one can face while the discussion is unfolding in the Western world. The reality is absolutely stunning. And of course, it had to start with the theatrical somehow.
And the issue of women's rights and women's empowerment is rightly so a transnational issue. How do we strike a balance, however, with ensuring increased global progress on this file without infringing on either the sovereignty or the internal affairs of other countries and contexts? So when we talk about women's rights, it's a global issue, but you also see a lot of perhaps maybe even pressure campaigns on certain contexts over history.
Yeah, you know,
how do we balance that?
This is too easy, I think, because you know, if you don't put yourself in the other's shoes, you risk to then overdo, even pushed by the goodwill or by the good intention. So again, I go back to the Saudi Arabia case. From distance and from the lack of putting things in perspective and in context, you might have a lot of things to say, and you can be very critical. But when you put things in context and when you put things in perspective, what's happening is absolutely amazing. Now, the measure of comparison should, in my humble view, be always relative, because otherwise you fall in the arrogance of what is typically the Western world arrogance.
I'm pretty sure a lot of members of the audience would like to hear more about how men reacted to your women's empowerment efforts in Albania.
No, there is one thing that is a bit disturbing, that nobody is screaming in Albania about man discrimination.
For now.
For now, yes. But jokes aside, I would say, first of all, this is not enough. This is far from being enough, because we need to make it work top down. So we see that there is more and more space for women in the decision-making levels. It's not just about the minister level, it's about the deputy ministers, it's about the direction of departments and so on. But still is not enough, because it needs to go also in the private sector, which is much more difficult. It needs to go also in the basic level, where we have a clear problem. And it needs to go at home, where again we have problems with domestic violence and all these things. So this is one side. The other side is that we have to be aware that it's not just magic, in the sense that it's not per se a change that would connect directly the woman figure with all the virtues. So it's also about individual responsibility and individual behavior and individual results. And at the end, but this is too soon maybe to get in conclusions, it's also about women being good to women.
It's a very good point.
So, you know, because sometimes women can be very good to the country when they are, you know, more, but can be not so good to each other when they become a majority. So it's also about that. But we don't have yet this problem, I guess. But still, it's important that women become, in the same time, not simply consumer of the change, but also promoters of the change, to get more women and more girls up, and to not simply, you know, get used to the position and then start to become the hell of each other.
Very well noted, Your Excellency. I wanted to ask, what challenges have your cabinet particularly faced when it comes to moving a policy from an announcement to an implementation phase?
Listen, my experience again, and please don't take it like, you know, trying to generalize or to give lectures. I've always suffered when I was a kid that my parents would lecture me, and I was always telling myself, promise, 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 you'll never lecture anyone when you will be in their age. So it's not easy, but I try. So, and let alone to lecture then countries or to lecture others. But my experience, when you talk to men and you say, we need to do this, men usually would say, yes, it's a great thing to do, let's do it. And then after some time you say, where are we with this? Oh, yes, I was thinking that maybe. So what do you mean maybe? We agreed that we'll do it. Yeah, but with women, you say, we need to do this. If they don't agree, they say straightforward. I don't think it's a good idea. But then, if it's decided, it's done. So I find very, very interesting that although men have this reputation, you know, to be strong and to be you know, standing on convictions, they are much more keen to, you know, approve the authority of another man without discussing, but in the same time, they are not good in then delivering. With women, it's different. Although they have the reputation to be more submitted, no, they will tell you, if they don't really feel it's a good idea, wait a minute, let's discuss it. Or I'm not sure this is the way to go. Or, and then, once it's decided, it's delivered. So in terms of deliverability, again, I think women are more reliable than men, but it's just my experience. So
I completely agree, Your Excellency.
You have to agree, and I'm happy I'm seeing some gentlemen that are agreeing also. But this is my experience, you know, and that's why I'm saying when it comes to things done, you know, even among, I should not say this, but again, I have to give precise answers to you. Even in comparison, I think that female ministers are more, you know, more in the delivery side reliable than male ministers. Yes.
Music to our ears, Your Excellency.
This is why you invited me, no?
I wanted to end our discussion with a bit of a nuanced question, because I find I myself, also as a woman, struggle with finding a more concrete answer to, and it is how the word culture is often hijacked and misused. You know, we tend to blame culture or blame tradition when we don't want to enforce very necessary changes when it comes to women's empowerment. What are your views on that?
Listen, culture and tradition and history matters, but I think more than all that, institutions matter. Mm-hmm. So it's a friend of mine once told me something I always remember. Success has two ways: or institutions create success, or success create institutions. So when you need to really push for a change that goes somehow in a different direction than what they call culture or tradition is going, you need to trust on success to then build the institution. And that was what we were talking before about, what you called theatrical, and what practically is a push that somehow forces the culture, forces the tradition to accept a new agent in town. Mm-hmm. And then through this you start to work and to put more belief that something institutional will rise. So going from a goodwill or the strong will, mm-hmm, or the forcing will on the top to something that then becomes part of the culture is a process. But it has to go somehow through showing examples of success that then bring other examples and others and others until you have something that becomes part of culture. Mm-hmm. Because look, Albania is a country that has gone through a very, very rough time of history. And it's a country that is Muslim and Christian, but with a very heavy patriarchal background, with a very, very discriminatory attitude towards women, mm-hmm, in history. In our first constitution, the code of the Albanians, women non-existing as individuals with their own right. And then we had this dramatic period of communist regime that tried to do a lot on what they called women emancipation, but which was somehow not simply forced, but also trying to bring women under the spotlight as being not simply equal to men, but as being men, which is again something not good at all. And if you look the art of communist time or the films of communist time, women are always, you know, some very, very, you know, strong, physically strong figures. which is not what we need. And then we had to enter this phase of freedom and building democracy, which questioned a lot of things. And there were two things happening, basically, with the entrance of democracy. One was the total inflation of so-called Miss competitions. Miss Albania, Miss Tirana, Miss Kindergarten, Miss this and Miss that. So a need to have the woman body exposed. And in the same time, a big falling back to the past when it came to the rights of girls, the rights of women in their homes. So from a situation in communism where it was impossible to imagine to keep women at home, we went back. So freedom in the name of culture and tradition brought us so much back to old ages, dark times. So these two extremes were what we were living with for a long time. Now things are getting more balanced, and I think politics has to lead by example, and we have to push as much as we can for this equality, because it's also about then having a society which is economically and socially much more balanced. And the last thing I would say is I got in my hands a very interesting book in the last days, published by an Italian author, and I never thought on these terms. And it was a book on the economy. So the man and woman relation and their impact on the economy. And the author is a woman, of course, and she was reminding something very simple. How much is the percentage of crimes committed by men and how much by women? How much are the car accidents caused by men and how much by women? How much domestic violence is caused by men and how much by women? And being in Italy, she was also saying how much of the mafia community is men and how much is women. And then the conclusion was that Italy, because of men's behavior, was losing every year more than 5% of its GDP.
Wow.
So also in terms of money, men are too expensive.
Of course they are. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for a wonderful session, and to our audience. Thank you.
Thank you.